It sat far from trade lanes, far from royal capitals, and far from the great wars that shaped the galaxy. Its sky was pale and quiet, its land wide and rough, marked by stone ridges and dry plains. For most of its history, only small research teams and patrol units ever came here. But on this day, Karos 9 burned. Smoke rose from shattered outposts, and emergency beacons flashed across the plain. Alien defense lines had collapsed faster than anyone expected. Confusion spread through command channels, and evacuation orders echoed too late. Among the chaos, Princess Althira of the Lyrian Dominion ran. Her long cloak was torn, her breathing uneven, and fear pressed hard against her chest. She had been trained to speak calmly, to rule wisely, to never show weakness, but training did not prepare her for this, being alone, hunted, with no guards at her side. Her escort had fallen back to delay the attackers. She had obeyed their last command and fled toward the ruins of an old survey station. Now silence surrounded her, broken only by distant alarms and the low hum of failing power grids. Althira crouched behind a broken wall, forcing herself to stay quiet. Her people had always believed humans were dangerous, strong beings from a harsh world, known for endurance and sudden force. Stories painted them as unpredictable. She hoped she would not meet one now. A sound echoed nearby. Heavy footsteps. Althira's heart froze. She pressed herself against the cold stone, her mind racing. If she was found, her capture would shatter her people's morale. She was not just a person, she was a symbol. The footsteps stopped. A shadow crossed the broken doorway. Then a voice spoke, low and steady. "I'm not here to hurt you." It was not her language, but the universal translator in her collar activated instantly. Althira slowly turned her head. A human warrior stood in the doorway. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and armored in dark combat gear marked with dust and burn scars. A helmet rested under one arm, revealing a face lined with exhaustion, not cruelty. His eyes scanned the room carefully, not with hunger, but with caution. Althira froze, fear tightening her grip on the stone floor. The human noticed her trembling hands. "You're injured," he said calmly. "I can help." She wanted to refuse. Every warning she had ever heard told her to run. But her leg throbbed sharply, and she knew she could not move fast enough. I am Lyrian," she said carefully. "You should leave." The human frowned slightly, then shook his head. "Doesn't matter who you are," he replied. "You're not safe here." He lowered his weapon and took a step back, giving her space. "My name is Ethan Hale," he said. "Human Frontier Guard. I was sent to check lost signals. Looks like I found more than I expected." Althira studied him. He did not advance. He did not demand. He waited. Slowly, she nodded. Her leg gave out as she tried to stand. Before she could fall, Ethan moved fast, not aggressively, but firmly catching her before she hit the ground. He set her down gently against a support beam. "Easy," he said. "That's not just fear. You're hurt." He opened a medical pouch and scanned her leg. The device beeped softly. "Fracture but stable," he said. "You can walk, but not far. We'll have to move carefully." Althira blinked. "We? You would help me?" she asked. Ethan met her gaze. "I don't leave people behind." Explosions echoed in the distance. Ethan helped her to her feet, adjusting his pace to match hers. They moved through the ruins, keeping low, using shadows and broken walls for cover. He checked corners first, always placing himself between danger and her. Althira noticed everything. How he paused to listen before crossing open ground. How he waited for her breathing to steady. How his voice never rose in panic, even when the sounds grew closer. At one point, a patrol drone passed overhead. Ethan pulled her into cover without a word, shielding her with his own body. She felt the solid strength of him, steady and unshaking. The drone moved on. Althira exhaled slowly. "Why are you here alone?" she asked quietly. "Because someone has to be," Ethan replied. "Frontier patrols don't get back up. We just do the job." They reached a ridge overlooking the plain. From there, Althea could see burning structures, her people's settlements. Her eyes filled with tears. "My guards. They stayed behind," she whispered. Ethan followed her gaze. "They did their duty," he said. "Because you mattered." She looked at him, surprised by the certainty in his voice. As they moved again, enemy scouts appeared ahead, small, fast, searching. Ethan guided her into a narrow canyon and pressed against the stone wall. "Stay here," he whispered. "Don't move." He stepped out alone. Althea watched in silent fear as he faced the scouts. He moved with precision, disabling equipment, forcing them back without unnecessary force. His actions were fast but controlled, like someone who had done this many times before. When he returned, unharmed, she realized her hands were shaking. "You faced them alone," she said. Ethan shrugged. "I promised I'd protect you." They finally reached an abandoned emergency shelter carved into the rock. Its doors still worked, sealing them inside. The lights flickered on. For the first time, they could breathe. Ethan set up a temporary signal beacon, trying to reach any Allied forces. While he worked, Althea studied him. "You do not act like the humans in our stories," she said softly. He glanced at her. Stories usually miss the quiet parts. Silence settled between them, not uncomfortable, but thoughtful. Outside, the sounds of battle continued. Althea straightened her posture, drawing on the strength she had been taught since childhood. "Ethan Hale," she said, her voice steady. "You saved my life." He looked at her, surprised by the formal tone. Anyone would have done the same. "No," she replied. "They would not." She hesitated, then spoke words that came from deeper than tradition. "I will remember this. Whatever comes next, I will not forget the human who stood between me and fear." Ethan nodded once. "Then we survive first," he said. "After that, we figure out the rest." The shelter lights hummed softly as the storm outside raged on. And in that small, quiet place on a forgotten world, a bond began, one that neither of them yet understood. Inside, the air was cool and quiet, broken only by the soft hum of old machines. Princess Althea sat on a metal bench, her injured leg supported by a brace Ethan had fitted carefully. She tried not to show pain, but every small movement reminded her how close she had come to being lost. Ethan stayed near the entrance, watching sensor readings and checking his signal beacon again and again. The device blinked weakly. The storm of interference outside was still too strong. "No reply yet," he said calmly, as if that was normal. Althea looked at him. "Does that worry you?" "It does," he answered honestly. "But worrying doesn't help. Planning does." She studied him in silence. Back home, warriors spoke loudly and proudly about strength. Ethan did neither. He moved with purpose, spoke only when needed, and carried himself like someone used to being alone. The shelter shook slightly as something heavy passed outside. Althea stiffened. Ethan raised a hand, signaling calm. He checked the sensors and nodded. "Just a ground carrier. They're searching, not fighting." "How can you be so sure?" she asked. "Because if they knew we were here," he said, "they wouldn't be careful." That answer unsettled her more than fear. Hours passed. Ethan rationed water, sharing it evenly without comment. When Althea tried to insist he take more, he shook his head. "You need it to heal," he said. "I'll be fine." When the shelter's old lights flickered, he repaired them without complaint. When Althea's leg swelled again, he adjusted the brace gently, explaining each step so she would not feel afraid. "You could have left me," she said quietly while he worked. "You could still leave." He met her eyes. "That's not how humans like me work." "What are humans like you?" she asked. Ethan paused, then smiled faintly. "Stubborn." A faint sound echoed through the shelter, a signal ping. Ethan moved instantly, checking the console. "Someone's scanning the area," he said. "Not attacking. Could be your people." Althea's heart lifted. "Then we will be rescued." "Maybe," Ethan said. "But it won't be simple." The shelter door unlocked slowly with a heavy groan. 3 Lyrian soldiers entered, weapons lowered but tense. Their eyes widened when they saw Althea alive. Relief flooded their expressions, then confusion when they noticed Ethan standing beside her. "Your Highness," one of them said quickly. We came as soon as we could. Althira stood with effort, steadying herself. I am safe, she said. Because of him. The soldiers looked at Ethan, unsure. He is human, another soldier whispered, unease clear in his voice. Yes, Althira replied firmly. And he protected me. Their commander stepped forward, studying Ethan closely. Human, he said carefully. Step away from the princess. Ethan did not move closer. He took a step back instead, hands visible. I'm not here to cause trouble, he said, just returning her safely. The soldiers exchanged looks. Trust did not come easily. Before more could be said, the ground trembled violently. A deep, rolling sound echoed across the plain. The commander's communicator crackled. Multiple enemy units converging. Defensive lines failing. Ethan turned to Althira. We don't have time for debate. The commander hesitated. Then another explosion shook the shelter. Fine, he said sharply. We moved together. They exited the shelter into open terrain. Smoke blurred the horizon. Enemy scouts moved between ridges, cutting off the direct route back to the Lyrian base. Our transports can't land, the commander said. Too risky. Too risky. Ethan studied the terrain quickly. There's a canyon east of here, he said. Narrow, but covered. I saw it earlier. The commander frowned. That route is dangerous. So is standing here, Ethan replied calmly. Althira turned to the commander. We go with him. The order surprised everyone. They moved fast, the soldiers forming a defensive ring, while Ethan led them through broken ground. He chose paths that avoided open areas, guiding them with sharp awareness. Twice, enemy scouts appeared, but each time, Ethan redirected the group before they were noticed. Althira walked beside him as best she could. You should be resting, he said quietly. If you can walk wounded for me, she replied, I can walk for my people. He glanced at her, respect in his eyes. As they reached the canyon, the narrow walls blocked enemy scanners. The group paused, breathing hard. Then an alarm sounded. Enemy units had followed them. The Lyrian soldiers prepared to defend, fear clear on their faces. Ethan stepped forward. Hold here, he said. I'll slow them down. The commander stared at him. You can't face them alone. Ethan checked his gear. I'm not alone. I'm buying time. Althira grabbed his arm. You will not sacrifice yourself. He met her gaze steadily. Protecting you is not sacrifice. It's duty. Before she could reply, he moved. He used the canyon's curves and shadows, disabling sensors and forcing the enemy to slow. He blocked paths, collapsed loose rock, and drew attention away from the group without reckless force. Every move was precise, practiced, and focused on delay, not destruction. From behind cover, Althira watched in awe. The Lyrian soldiers followed his instructions exactly. When he signaled, they moved deeper into the canyon. When he returned, unharmed but exhausted, relief washed over them. You survived, Althira said softly. I told you, Ethan replied. Stubborn. They reached a temporary Lyrian command post carved into the canyon wall. Shields activated, sealing them inside. For the first time since the attack began, the princess was truly safe. Medical staff rushed to her side, but she did not look away from Ethan. The Lyrian commander approached him slowly. You protected our future, he said. Our people will remember this. Ethan nodded. Just doing my job. Althira stepped forward, standing tall despite her injury. He will remain with us, she said clearly. As my protector. Murmurs filled the chamber. Your Highness, the commander began. This is my decision, Althira said firmly. I will not send away the one who stood when others fell back. Ethan looked at her, surprised. You don't owe me, he started. I owe the truth, she replied. And the truth is this. I trust you. Silence followed. Outside, the battle continued. But inside the canyon post, something had changed. Fear had not vanished, but it had been met and endured. And for the first time, the Lyrian people began to understand why humans were not feared because they were cruel, but because they did not turn away when others did. End of part 2. Inside the stone walls, Screens showed maps filled with blinking warnings. Enemy units continued to move across Karos 9, cutting supply lines and surrounding key locations. The Lyrian defenses were holding, but only barely. Every report carried the same tone: delay, retreat, survive. Princess Althira stood near the main display, listening to officers speak in low, tense voices. Her injury had been treated, and she could stand again, though pain still lingered. She ignored it. Her people needed clarity, not weakness. Ethan stood a short distance behind her, quiet as always. He watched everything: the screens, the soldiers, the small pauses where fear tried to settle in. This place was different from human command centers, but pressure felt the same everywhere. A senior Lyrian strategist spoke up. "If the enemy reaches the eastern ridge, this post will be cut off." Another officer shook his head. "We do not have enough units to hold that ground." Silence followed. Althira turned slowly. "Then we cannot allow them to reach it." The strategist hesitated. "Your Highness, with respect, our forces are exhausted." Ethan stepped forward. "There's another option," he said. All eyes turned toward him. The strategist's tone cooled. "This is a Lyrian operation." Ethan nodded. "I understand. But humans train for holding ground when retreat isn't possible." Murmurs spread through the room. Althira raised a hand. "Let him speak." Ethan activated a small projector from his wrist unit. A map appeared, marking narrow passes and high stone outcroppings near the eastern ridge. "These points here," he said, "can slow enemy movement. Not with numbers, but positioning." The strategist frowned. "We tried similar tactics." "Did you rotate defenders?" Ethan asked. The strategist blinked. "Rotate? Short shifts," Ethan explained. "No one holds a position until they collapse. You rotate, rest, return. Keeps morale steady." The room grew quiet. "That may work," one officer said slowly. "But we still lack manpower," another added. Ethan looked at Althira. She understood immediately. "Our civilians can assist," she said. "Logistics, signals, supply movement. Free our soldiers to defend." The strategist stared at her. "Your Highness, that is dangerous." "So is losing our world," she replied evenly. Orders spread quickly. The command post shifted from waiting to moving. Units redeployed. Supplies were reorganized. Signals adjusted, and Ethan went with the first defense group. Althira watched him prepare near the canyon entrance. He checked gear, tested comms, and spoke quietly with Lyrian soldiers who still eyed him with uncertainty. "You don't have to trust me," he told them. "Just follow the plan." One soldier finally asked, "Why do you do this, human?" Ethan paused. "Because someone has to stand." The words carried more weight than any speech. The eastern ridge was rough terrain, sharp stone, narrow paths, and high winds. The enemy advanced carefully, expecting resistance but not order. That was their mistake. Ethan placed the first team behind a rock formation, the second above them, and a third farther back as support. When the enemy scouts appeared, they were met with controlled resistance, not panic. Signals flashed. "Fall back, second team," Ethan ordered calmly. They moved without confusion. The enemy pressed forward, thinking the defense was breaking. Then the first team returned from a different angle. From the ridge, Althira watched through live feed, her heart tight but steady. Ethan moved between positions, encouraging, correcting, never raising his voice. When a section nearly failed, he stepped into place himself, holding long enough for reinforcements to arrive. "Human unit holding," a surprised officer reported. "They're not retreating. They're rotating," the strategist said slowly. Just as he said, hours passed. The enemy advance slowed, then stopped. By nightfall, the ridge still stood. Inside the command post, relief spread like warm air. Soldiers sat down, breathing hard, some laughing in disbelief. Althira allowed herself a small smile, but it did not last. A new alert sounded deeper, heavier. "Large unit movement detected. an officer said. Much stronger than previous waves. The strategist's face darkened. If that reaches the ridge, everything we gained is lost. Ethan returned to the command post, dust-covered and tired. He listened to the report, then looked at the map. They're moving fast, he said. Yes, the strategist replied. Too fast. Althira met Ethan's eyes. Can we stop them? He thought for a long moment. We can delay them, he said. Long enough for evacuation. The room fell silent. No, Althira said immediately. We do not abandon our world. Althira said. Ethan turned to her. Protecting lives comes first. So does hope, she replied. If we run now, we lose both. He studied her face and saw no fear, only resolve. Then I'll need volunteers, he said. Every Lyrian soldier in the room stepped forward. Ethan nodded once. All right. They moved under cover of darkness, setting up defenses not meant to win, but to endure. Althira stayed behind to coordinate support, refusing to rest. From the ridge, the enemy arrived like a wave. The ground shook. Ethan stood at the center point, directing movement, rotating units, sealing gaps. He was everywhere on comms, in motion. Steady even when the pressure grew intense. At one moment, a defensive line faltered. Fear crept in. Ethan stepped forward. Hold, he said simply. And they did. The enemy advance slowed again. Minutes turned into an hour, then another. Finally, long-range sensors lit up. Allied signals detected. An officer reported from the command post. Multiple human ships entering orbit. Althira's breath caught. Human fleet? The strategist asked. Yes? The officer replied. They answered the distress call. On the ridge, Ethan heard the message through his comm. He closed his eyes briefly. Hold just a little longer, he said. The sky above Karos 9 brightened as human ships moved into position, not firing wildly, but precisely, forcing the enemy to retreat. The battle ended not with chaos, but with silence. At dawn, Ethan returned to the command post, exhausted but standing. Althira walked toward him. You kept your promise, she said. So did you, he replied. Around them, Lyrian soldiers watched the human warrior with new eyes, not fear, but respect. The strategist stepped forward and bowed his head. Your presence changed this battle, he said. And our understanding. Althira placed her hand over her heart. The galaxy will hear of this, she said. That when our world stood on the edge, a human stood with us. Ethan shook his head lightly. I wasn't alone. No, she said softly. But you led. As the sun rose over the scarred land, something shifted not just in the war, but in the bond between two peoples, and the galaxy had begun to notice. The light touched broken ridges, damaged outposts, and the quiet places where fighting had ended only hours before. Smoke still drifted in thin lines, but the ground no longer shook. For the first time in days, the world felt like it might breathe again. Princess Althira stood at the edge of the canyon command post, watching the sky. Human ships moved in calm patterns above the planet, steady and controlled. They did not rush. They did not boast. They simply held position, guarding the space around Karos 9 like silent sentinels. Behind her, the command post was alive with activity. Engineers restored systems. Medics moved carefully among the wounded. Officers spoke with calmer voices. Fear had not vanished, but it no longer ruled the room. Ethan sat on a low crate near the entrance, cleaning dust from his gear. His movements were slow now, the weight of exhaustion finally catching up to him. He had not slept in over a day, but he did not complain. Althira turned and walked toward him. You should rest, she said gently. In a minute, Ethan replied. Just want to finish this. She noticed the small tremor in his hands, quickly controlled. She had seen many warriors before, strong, proud, loud. Ethan was none of those things. Yet he had held a line when others believed it impossible. You saved this world, she said. He shook his head. A lot of people did. You stood when hope was failing, she replied. That matters. Before he could answer, a Lyrian officer approached and bowed deeply. Your Highness, the officer said. The council has arrived. Althira straightened at once. The Lyrian High Council gathered in the central chamber of the canyon post. Their robes were dust-stained, their faces tired, but their eyes were sharp with concern and relief. The High Speaker stepped forward. Princess Althira, she said. We believed you lost. I am here, Althira replied calmly. Because a human stood between me and fear. Murmurs spread through the chamber. The High Speaker's gaze moved to Ethan. This is the one? Yes, Althira said. Ethan Hale of the Human Frontier Guard. The council studied him closely. Ethan stood respectfully, hands at his sides, saying nothing. You acted without orders, one counselor said. You interfered in our conflict. Ethan nodded. Yes. Why? Another asked. Ethan answered simply. Someone needed help. The council fell silent. The High Speaker spoke again. Our records speak of human strength, but also of human independence. You risked much for someone not of your people. Ethan met her gaze. People are people. Althira stepped forward. This human did not demand loyalty, she said. He did not ask for reward. He stayed when retreat was easier. Because of him, our forces held. Because of him, our world still stands. The council listened carefully. The galaxy will ask questions, a counselor said. They will wonder why humans answered when others did not. Althira replied, Let them ask. The answer will remain the same. The High Speaker nodded slowly. Then we must respond wisely. She turned to Ethan. Human warrior, what do you seek in return? Ethan looked surprised. Nothing. A few counselors exchanged uneasy glances. You must seek something, one insisted. Ethan thought for a moment. If I had to ask, treat humans as allies, not rumors. Silence followed. That is a bold request, the High Speaker said. So was standing on that ridge, Althira replied. The council reached a quiet decision. The High Speaker raised her hand. Ethan Hale, she said. The Lyrian Dominion acknowledges your service. You will be honored as a defender of our people. Ethan bowed his head slightly. Thank you. The council began to disperse, but Althira did not move. There is one more matter, she said. The room grew still. Our traditions would have me return to the capital, she continued. To recover. To speak. To move on. And will you? The High Speaker asked. Althira looked at Ethan. No, she said. Soft gasps echoed around the chamber. I will remain here, Althira declared, until this world is fully secure. And I will remain by the side of the human who protected me. The counselors whispered among themselves. Your Highness, one said carefully. This is highly unusual. So was a human holding our defense line, she replied. So was humanity answering our call when others did not. The High Speaker studied Althira for a long moment. This is not a vow made lightly, she said. No, Althira agreed. It is made with clarity. She turned to Ethan. I vowed to remember the human who stood with me, she said softly. Now I vow more than memory. I vow loyalty, trust, and shared purpose. Ethan looked at her, stunned. Althira, he said quietly. You don't have to tie your future to mine. I choose to, she replied. The High Speaker raised her hand again. Then let it be recorded, she said. A vow freely given is honored. Quote, the chamber exhaled as one. Outside, word spread quickly. Lyrian soldiers watched Ethan differently now, not as an outsider, but as someone who had earned his place. Human crews coordinated with alien teams, working side by side without hesitation. On the ridge where the line had held, flags were raised, not of conquest, but of unity. Later that day, Ethan stood with Althira overlooking the plain. Repairs had begun. Transport ships moved supplies instead of weapons. Life, slowly, returned. You could leave when your fleet departs, Althira said. No one would stop you. I know, Ethan replied. And will you? She asked. He looked at the horizon. I think, he said, I'm exactly where I need to be. She smiled. Then so am I. A message arrived from the Human Fleet Command, requesting Ethan's report. He sent it with few words, as always. When it was done, he turned back to Althea. "What happens now?" he asked. "We rebuild," she said. Together, as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the land, a new story began to spread across the stars. Not of conquest, not of fear, but of a human who stood his ground, and an alien princess who chose to stand beside him. The galaxy would remember Karos 9, not as a battlefield, but as the place where trust changed everything,